because if you didn't break down, then you're not going to be challenged and you're not going to be evolved. Okay, and we're here to evolve as beings completely.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Anyone Anywhere podcast. So today we have the mental coach Nuno Matos. Let me do a quick intro about Nuno. Nuno holds a PhD in sports science and a master in integral coaching. Nuno is a former national swimmer and also a former jiu-jitsu athlete. Currently, Nuno does surf, and he also runs marathon. And also, as he likes to say, he goes to the gym. Nuno works as a mental coach in sports and sports athletes, coaches and parents of athletes to overcome common challenge and difficulties in high competition sports. Nuno's mission is to unleash the top athletes' performer whilst making their lives more fulfilling. How are you today, Nuno?
Good. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure
Thank
to
you
be
so
here.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. The first question that I like to ask to my guests is how is everything with the current times in Portugal and with your family?
Well, yeah, thankfully, all is good. Coronavirus or this crisis has blessed me and my wife with a beautiful daughter. She's 5 months now. She was born on the 13th of April, right in the epicenter of the pandemic. So it's we we can have wonderful gifts in the midst of stormy times, and that was the case. But yeah, fortunately, very blessed to say that my family is well, my friends are well, and I've really not met personally anyone who's seriously suffered from coronavirus infection. So in a way, I'm fortunate. I know that a lot of people are suffering from this virus, but that's my situation.
I think it's
So
beautiful, and yeah, it's beautiful, like the flower in the middle of the chaos. Like, and congratulations first of all to you and to your wife.
thank
So
you.
thank you so much. Can you tell me a little bit about of your story for the listeners and viewers that still don't know you, please?
Yeah. Uh, well, it's a long story, and I'll try to cut a lot of unimportant pieces so I give you the general idea. In my story is one of a very curious and active child. That's how I was brought up. Was put to swim at the age of 3, and by the age of 7, 8, I was already sports coach. So swim coaches were noticing me, so they picked me up for a more developed squad, and quickly I was starting to entering my first tournaments, and eventually, I grew up or developed to become a national level swimmer. I was national champion. 200 butterfly was my main event. I also swam medley. 400 medley was a very strong event for me, as it was 200 backstroke. And so, I learned to train a lot, to dedicate myself to something a lot. Training twice a day, 3 times a week from the age of 13 onwards. So I'd be waking up at 6:30 off to the swimming pool, and at 8:30 I would start classes in school. And then, lunchtime, go home, have lunch, study or rest a bit. And then at 5:30 back at swimming pool for the evening session, which was the main one. Weekends would be competitions, and so that's how I really grew. My adolescent years was I was not going out, I was not socializing, I was extremely focused on my swimming career and school. But school would be, in my view at the time, was coming second for me. So I always put more emphasis and focus on my swimming. I thought, because I wanted to become an Olympic swimmer, and that those were my aspirations as an athlete, as a swimmer. And it happens that when you train so much, and if the training load is not well calibrated and balanced, and then if you have other aspects of your life that people are not putting attention on, either your parents or your sports coach or your teachers at school, you may start to develop an unbalance that science has given the name of overtraining. And so overtraining has to do with extremely high training loads, but it has to do with a lot more stuff than that, And overtraining is normally perceived at first, it's overtraining, so it's overloading the athlete. But overtraining is not just training load. It is training load and more stuff. And it's to do with the athlete's psychology, with the athlete's identity, with the athlete's personality, with the athlete's relationships, with sports coach, parents, with how he perceives the sport when he competes, etc. And it's to do with the system that supports you. Do I have easy access to doctors and physiotherapists when I'm injured, or is this hard? Do I have financial support for my travels, etc.? Because when you don't have that, then that's a systemic part of your life that directly influences and impacts your sport, and influence and impacts your physiology. So I'm basically saying that overtraining comes from a multi-factor of causes. And so you can take different perspectives when looking at overtraining. And that's when I finished my degree in Coimbra University and I graduated from sports science, I went straight to England for a master's in Exeter University. And I was continuing to study training adaptations. I wanted to, there was one question that I always had as a swimmer, like, why is it that, a lot of the swim coaches, get their athletes top performance in the exact right time where the nationals were happening. And you could swim two weeks before in the regional championship and be, and not do good performances because the load was very heavy, and then they would put the load down, the volume down, keep the intensity high, and boom, you would do what we call the overcompensation. So when you get rest, then now the body is going to overcompensate and it's going to be sharp. And so that always fascinated me, and I really was curious already about these physiological adaptations. Why is it that you're so low and 2 weeks later you're boom in a new level? And so this interest of how things work this way in the body physiology and how they work was something that was always a big curiosity. But then, I was saying that during my career, about the age of 16, 17, I started experiencing what you'd call this syndrome of overtraining, or the symptoms of overtraining, which would knock me out, like my immune system. I'd get tonsillitis pretty frequently. I was having tonsillitis like 2 or 3 times a year, a season. And normally they would come at close to the big competitions, So it was really tough when you're training so hard, and then 1 week before, or 2 days before, you're starting to feel not good. You're starting to feel ill, fever coming, sore throats, and all these symptoms developing again. And so I didn't know that this was called overtraining. My coach didn't know at the time. People, science was not, so followed as it is now. Maybe in Germany they would know what was happening with me, but in Portugal at the time, no. And so it was when I did 1 year of Erasmus. I skipped this part. The third year of my undergrad, I went to England at Exeter University to do 1 year doing sports science there, And one of the modules I had, actually the guy who became my supervisor during my PhD, I read a chapter on overtraining, and I was really curious. And as I started reading, I was like, these are all the symptoms I was experiencing. Shit, I need to learn more about this because I want to solve this, So that curiosity and will to sort of solve the overtraining problem or phenomena stick with me. I went back to Portugal, graduated, and then back to England, back to the same university, Exeter University, 1 year of master's, and I was preparing for my PhD. And so I knew that now what I want to do is, one, I want to find out what the heck happened to myself because I was training so much and I couldn't do it. And number two, I want to help athletes who are suffering from this. And so that became my, that was my vision. And, at the age of 21 is the time I burned out from swimming. So at this time, I was no longer training those extreme loads because I was starting to get demotivated because I tried enough, and it just became too much. And there's a point like you throw the towel down and you say, I give up, But I said goodbye to swimming with contraction, and that's not healthy, saying goodbye to a sport that gave me so much and made me so much of who I am, where I spent so many hours, and then I was looking back at swimming and like detesting swimming, hating swimming. This is not healthy, but it's understandable that if you're leaving the sport, like you could say that the gift the sport has given me is like all this suffering. Apart, obviously there's good times and high times, but to leave the sport like that and not wanting to step foot in a swimming pool for so 21 to 27, I didn't step foot in a swimming pool. So for 6 years, I created this shadow, and so at the same time, I'm 25, 26, I'm starting my PhD. And at the age of 28, halfway through my PhD, where I was already looking into overtraining, people knew that there's a few people at the university campus that knew that I had been a good swimmer, and they had their university swimming team. And so they invited me. And at the time I was like, nah. And then I was like, well, why not? Now I feel more resolved inside, and why not give it a go and just do it in a healthier way with a new mindset, and and that's what I did. And so for 1 year I swam for Exeter University Swim Club, and I did some couple of PBs on the short distances, not more than 50 meters, because I was still training jiu-jitsu at the time. I was already purple belt by that time. And so, then I really wanted to expand my knowledge of science in what comes to learning about overtraining, how it works physiologically. So I was looking at immune parameters, hormonal parameters, blood parameters like lactates, and heart rate variability. But I was challenging my supervisors to do more than that, than just use the physiology, which is considered like the golden science in sports science, and also in many other disciplines, like medicine, for example, because that's their way, that's their mode of operating. And looking back at my experience and the stuff that I was learning there, exit to university, I was questioning a lot of stuff, and I started to question, like, physiology cannot explain everything. So if I just do a PhD based on physiology, like, you know, all my other colleagues are doing, it's not going to paint the picture that we want to paint. So I challenged them. I realized, no, like, my psychology was affecting me. I was clearly a very insecure athlete. I had no confidence in myself. I had no killer instinct. I had, I was very asleep in a way. And I could look at my relationship with my father and my coach and the culture that was present in swimming at that time, which was a very a stab in the back, everyone was speaking in the back of other coaches and I'm better than him. And so I grew up, with all this unhealthy culture and a very pressuring father who, although he was extremely present and that was his way of showing support, the way he did it, and he didn't have that intention, but it hurt me a lot, and it wasn't so good for me, and was one of the reasons why I was lacking so much confidence, because I was like I was swimming for my dad. So if I swam well, it was all good and amazing, but if I didn't swim well, it was horrible. And so I could see these patterns in my experience in the past, and I'd studied the physiology a lot by that time, and I still couldn't find, like, okay, so it must be there's more stuff that's contributing to this problem. And so that's how, I challenged my supervisors. Yeah, we're including psychology and sociology and physiology, and so we'll include these three disciplines on our thesis. My first supervisor, he's younger. He could see, yeah, that's making sense. It's like we're all gonna go into a road that we don't have much experience, because their knowledge was built on physiology, not psychology or sociology. And so I challenged, and my second supervisor then eventually he couldn't say no, and so we moved forwards. And through this, there was a lot of criticism, because I was in a department. I was in a Children's Health and Exercise Research Center that just received a massive grant from the Queen to build an MRI scanning unit for looking at, muscular contraction, but at the cellular level, ATP breakdown on a child's gastrocnemius, for example, on the calf. So it was like amazing equipment for research, and but everyone around there was physiology oriented. So they would look into psychology, sociology as like, that's wishy-washy, mates. That's not clear. That's like not really real, So don't go there. So I had to go through a lot of this, and eventually, prove my point that I had an intuition and then experience base that I was going in the right direction. But this was tough. And so halfway through my PhD, I come across a guy named Ken Wilber, who I became, fascinated by what he created. He's still alive. And he has created what for me is a masterpiece, and still people are not really paying attention to this guy's work. And I basically saw something that said integral theory. And this integral theory, reading it at first, the first thing you read about integral theory is that there are four main perspectives, there are four main quadrants of reality. And in short, they inform for the perspectives we take, and that these four main perspectives that tetra emerge moment to moment wherever we are, with whatever phenomena we're looking into, they're here present as I'm speaking to you, and they were never away. But it basically says there are exterior dimensions of reality and there are interior dimensions. The exterior are objective, the interior are subjective. There are perspective of individual perspective, if we're just looking at, like me, for example, as an athlete, or one ATP molecule in my body, you know, that's also a unit, an individual unit. So you can look at, you know, things as parts, so we can divide them, and that's an individual perspective we're taking. Or if one more ATP cell comes close, that makes a collective. Okay, so you basically have four main perspectives, which is the interior and exterior of the individual and the collective. Okay, so these four perspectives are ever present and they're ever emerging and manifesting. And basically this gave me the confidence that I was going in the right direction. So I'm going to finish the PhD. Now, cut the long story short, you know, finish the PhD, then by that time I'd looked enough into the sports psychology, and I wasn't totally happy because I felt it was very superficial, you know, and very cognitive. Something I can say is extremely cognitive. But we have other dimensions other than just a cognitive dimension, which is basically the ability to take perspectives. Okay, that's a cognitive intelligence. That's the QI or the IQ. You know. We have up to 24 lines of intelligence. Okay, humans have different streams of consciousness or intelligence that inform for different things. Okay, the main one is cognitive, but there's others. You know, there's emotional intelligence, there's moral intelligence, there's somatic intelligence, so on and so on. So I just, you know, finished my PhD and I delved into integral theory. And then I was trying to find a way, okay, I want to work with athletes, and what sports psychology has given me doesn't look like it's enough. And therefore I need something, because I want to work with athletes. I want them not to experience overtraining, or I want them to recover from overtraining if that's what they're experiencing. And eventually I found, you know, about 1 year after my PhD, I found a school of coaching that was called Integral Coaching Canada. And I realized that these guys picked Ken Wilber's integral theory and applied it to coaching. Okay. And I became fascinated again. And I said, again, they were releasing their first courses at that time. This is 2011, 12, in Amsterdam. So they started in Canada, but by this time they were starting to open up courses there in Amsterdam. So I was living in England. I could pop in there. And so this training took me 2 years to complete. I was a proper, rigorous training to become a coach. And so you become a coach in Integral Coaching Canada, not just to, you know, help others, but you're in the process of helping others, or in the process of training myself to become a coach. I'm having deep inner work as I go through. As I learn the method, I'm also learning about myself, you know. And so this stuff really, really captivated me and made all sense to me. And then, you know, I graduated from Integral Coaching Canada in June 2014, and, you know, returned to Portugal, and I launched myself, starting to work with clients, and I thought it was going to be easy, and it wasn't to create a business, because I had no idea what business was, or managing a business, or, you know, I only cared about the method and working with humans, in this case athletes. But then life started teaching me some good lessons, and you know, here I am today, you know, and I've been doing it, you know, full time, with lots and lots of struggles in between, and now I'm here.
I think it's a great
story.
No, like I think a great story. It has to be also a long story, and it's a lot. Since a national champion, like to be taking the PhD that you study in Coimbra after you went to UK, and
Exactly.
in the present days you are integral coaching. Let's, for the ones that don't know what is integral coaching, I was reading a little bit in your website that I will put after in the description. Can you explain us a little bit? A little
Yeah,
bit
so
more?
integral coaching is a methodology. Since it's taking the wisdom of the integral theory by Ken Wilber, then it did very well in looking at all the schools of coaching in the world and picking up the stuff that mattered and that worked. Okay, because normally what you get is like different schools of thought, and that applies to different schools of coaching. They stick to their truth, and normally they're coming from one fixed perspective, and they don't realize there's at least three more perspectives that are influencing that phenomenon. So what Integral Coaching Canada did is like, okay, so there's all these perspectives. Let's see where each school is coming from, and now let's take what seems to be the best from each of these schools and put it in a coherent framework that allows you to really work with the human being, and work with the human being so in a way where you're not forcing your wisdom or your knowledge onto your clients. Everyone's got their own wisdom. You're just facilitating the client to access their own wisdom and make their own choices whilst building muscles to embody a new way of being in their own topic or challenge that they're working in, you know. So it's a school of embodiment where change is sustainable. It doesn't go away when the coach goes away, which is normally the case for many schools of coaching. Yeah. And is also normally the case for a lot of schools of coaching, that the coach is telling you this is the way it goes. And so there can be no challenge from you to myself. And I'm still coming from here to down here. Whereas when I meet a client, I'm meeting a full-on human being with pains and blind spots and shadows that I also have pains and blind spots and shadows. So I'm just there to really try to look as the client, not just look at the client, which is also normally the case in coaching school. So there's this separation where you're staying here just analyzing and interpreting. And this becomes very analytic, and it lacks, once you get into the method, you realize how much it lacks heart, you know? So it's like, you always have the answers, like, no, myself as a coach, when I meet a client, I'm just try to be as open as possible and not get in the mode of, okay, I know exactly what to do with you, know exactly where you're going through. No, I really want to empathize with the coach and connect at a deep level with the clients, I say, coaches, clients. So it's a school of embodiment where when we're being trained, you're realizing that the instruments, apart from the theory that we have, which is a lot and is rigorous, you start to use the self as instrument for change. So it's like my whole being, when I'm coaching, is being used as a channeling of what's best for the client. Okay. And for me, it's mind-blowing, you know. It blew me away. It changed my life. Integral Coaching Canada, I have no hesitation in saying how much it changed my life, how much it helped me to go from an arrogant prick to a more humble person, you know, as life threw me shit to my face and told me in a way, without saying anything, um, take it easy, man. You know, don't be so infatuated. with who you are and what you have and what you've learned and etc. And so, um, you know, it's a school of embodiment, and it's a school of deep and lasting change. Yeah, that integrated the best, integrated East with West, and yeah, into this beautiful method.
What you mean by integrate the East with the West? Can you explain a little bit more on that?
Sure. So because there's a lot of methodologies that's coming from the West. You have more the scientific methodologies, the analytic methodologies, the very concrete and objective ways of working. And then you look into the East, and there's more subjective methods or methodologies, right? You have, for example, meditation. Um, you have the Tai Chi, you have the martial arts. They all came from the East, you know. So there's so much wisdom there. And because the way the West developed was more like those quadrants when I was speaking, like exterior quadrants, it led us as a whole, or a Western society, to not only think or look at the East in superiority terms, but also look at the East as wishy-washy. That's like crazy stuff. You know, things have changed now. There's being more integration now. So meditation is not now like, oh, you're crazy. You know, it's suddenly coaching is not like, oh, you're sick, or 5 years ago it was like, what's coaching or psychology? So joining East with West is precisely bringing the ways of seeing the world in the East and the ways of seeing the world in the West. So the objective with the subjective, and bringing them closer. So bringing specific aspects of the methods, or each of those methods, into work together. Okay, as opposed to saying, no, I was born in the West, and so science or concrete stuff is all I care and I can identify with. So that's bullshit. Or saying, those guys there, no, we don't need your science, and science is bad, and da 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 da. You know. So yeah. Does that answer the question?
I think yes. I wanted also to ask you if you can give me an example, because I know that you work with one of our previous guests, Pedro Ramalho. What is, just to have a practical idea, what is a work with a top athlete, a world champion?
Yeah, it's awesome and such privilege to have worked with Paquito, and we still stay in contact. Because what happens at the end of a coaching program is that because of the depth that you went into, you build this massive connection, human connection, something we lack so much these days, And so without me wanting it, or doing something to keep the connection, it just naturally stays there. It's impossible, because where we go during those months, it's like some very special places, and people tend to not forget the special places or special experiences they've had in their lives. How is it to work with a world champion? Well, I think I don't see it so much to what is it like to work with a world champion. I'm seeing it more, or experiencing it more, or how I approach that is, it's not that I'm not going to remember that he's a world champion, but it's like, what I really want to remember is that he's a human being, and that's the most important thing for me, because it's not because he's a world champion or not a world champion that I'm going to coach him differently, you see. So he sits in front of me. He may have earned 10 gold medals in the Olympics. He's still a human being. And so that's what I want to honor, in my clients, is our full humanity that so often is not honored. And so we get to repress aspects of our own humanity. We get to repress them because they're not well seen or not welcome, or and that leads to a lot of suffering. So for me to coach Paquito was like, it was extremely special, don't get me wrong, but like so many of my programs are, if my client is full on with me, and man, it doesn't matter if he's a world champion or if he's whatever, it's such a special thing. That's why it's the work I do. I feel so privileged because it puts me in this position of receiving a human being with her or his pains and views and perspectives, etc. And I get the blessing and the privilege to have the opportunity of working with this human being, and the work that comes out of it is extremely fulfilling for me as a human being, as a citizen, as a father, as a friend, as a son. And it just fulfills you on many levels that I think unless you experience it, it's maybe not so easy to understand. I'm not even sure that I can pass this message well. Is this making sense for you, Raj?
I think it's making sense. I will try to do a resume, and after you, Nuno will tell me if I'm wrong or not. So it doesn't matter if it's Paquito that is a world champion or not. You see it, all of us or all of your clients as human beings. So your kind of approach, I will say, that is unique with each person, independent of your previous achievements that you have.
Totally.
I think
Could
it's
be working with Tony Robbins, and I still know he's a human being with his own pains and shadows.
Exactly. No, he's still a person, like you said it, and I think I like the idea because also you said it something before about the sustainability of your coaching, because sometimes you see the coaching, it's something addicted that you have to always come back.
Right.
What you mean by that? Can you tell me a little bit more also?
Well, yeah, because so any program that I start with a client, I completed all my programs. It has a beginning, middle, and end. And by the end, the last session, it's called completion session. You have an actual session that's prepared for that, And so I was taught during my training that you're not sticking with your client forever. Many coaching schools do that. You don't do that, because that's the analogy I use as seeing a bird with a broken leg on the street, and you see that the bird is suffering, so you pick it up and bring it home, you feed it for a while, you heal the leg, and then what are you going to do? Going to keep the bird for yourself, or you're going to set the bird free? Because if you don't set the bird free, he's never going to have the opportunity to fully explore the new recovered leg. It's the same. It's the essence of life. If I stick to the client forever, he's going to unconsciously develop a dependence with me that's not going to be healthy at all. So a lot of sports psychologists stick, and coaches stick with their clients forever, for long periods of time. That for me doesn't make much sense.
I think it's and can we talk a little bit more about the program itself, what it consists? Can you give me some more insights?
Right. Okay. So these coaching programs, each coaching program, I don't work with for less than 3 months with someone, because change doesn't happen like that. Okay, change that comes like that, I'm always, I twist my nose, I'm skeptical, because I know an insight is not enough to produce sustainable change. An insight is enough to produce change, but an insight is not enough to produce sustainable change. For sustainable change, you need to add new muscles to the I in you, to the self in you. Okay, so I call these inner muscles. They're not physical muscles like we have. Physical muscles are finite. Okay, I think there are 206 in the body we have as human beings. But in our inner dimension, interior dimension, they are infinite. There's no limit to the capacities or muscles that one can build. Okay, so so I see my clients, so 3 months minimum to 6 to 9, and 9 is normally, that's the final bit, the end. And then we have a sequence of, or a cadence of every 2 weeks. I'm seeing the client in a session here. Okay, so before this call, I was with the client. And why the 2 weeks in between? Well, because every session the client leaves with a new practice. Okay, this practice is gonna challenge the client in certain capacities or inner muscles that they don't have yet fully developed, or they need more strength there. And therefore, during these 2 weeks, he adds the practice on a daily basis, and he starts to see the world with new eyes. But so the only thing I'm telling the client to do is like, okay, this is going to be your next practice. But even when I do this and I offer my suggestion to the client, because it's all a very creative process in the moment, depending on what developmental objective we're working on. And so I have this, I have my ICC method full on my back, and then it's like self. And so I invite the clients, as I offer the practice, I invited the clients, I ask him, how does this land? What else could we do with this practice that maybe is going to make it, really right on the spot, and so the client can give some certain feedback. Okay, maybe I could do this way. I said, boom, okay, that's spot on, that's enough. So I keep the practices simple but powerful. Okay, and then 2 weeks he's doing this parallel. He'll have daily questions and weekly questions specifically made for this specific practice that he will have to be answering on a sort of daily basis. It can be 3 to 5 times a week, and then he'll have the weekly questions at the end of the first week of work, and then he goes back to the daily questions for another week. Weekends, boom, we have the session. Okay, so, and this process, you really you start to see a new being evolve, starting to manifest with slight nuances on how they're thinking, what they're doing, what they're worrying about, and depending on the progress of the client, he will go from its own current way of being, and he'll grow into a new way of being. And that's also why this method uses metaphors. So I have to offer a metaphor to the client. This all happens on the second session, after I've done the exploration of the topic on the first session. In between the first and the second, there's no practices. So we do the exploration of the topic, finish the session, I go home, do my homework. So I prepare the coaching program, which involves, creating these 2 images, 2 metaphors, one that describes the current way of being of the client, and the other one, the new way of being, is going to help support and inspire the client through his growth. Okay. Now, why do we work with the current way of being? Well, because we're all in automatic pilot. I include myself there in many areas of my life. Okay, I'm not perfect, and it's just that's the way we are. We go into automatic pilot because we can be functional in this way, but at certain points in our lives, this functionality starts to break down. Okay, this is all part of growth. Because if it didn't break down, then you're not going to be challenged and you're not going to evolve. Okay, and we're here to evolve as beings completely, you know. And so the adding of practices or capabilities from the current way into the as you develop through the coaching starts to create this new way of being, and it starts to be embodied. It's not coming just from here. Coming from here is only at the beginning of the coaching. With the practices, they lead to the embodiment. so that's why it's integral method, because the mind, the head, is being considered and included, and neck down is also being considered and included. Okay, so when we have so when we are automatic or beings, or when we are in automatic pilot, that means that a lot of shit goes unnoticed about myself. Okay, so when a client comes and says, oh, I have this thing, I've got nerves before competition and stuff, I want to start a coaching program, I never go, okay, so you need a new way of doing stuff, because the way you're doing it is not working, right? So you need a new way of working. And if you approach the client in this manner, somehow, most likely unconscious, in rare cases consciously, he's getting the message that who I was and who I've been up until now has had no use, because he's getting rid of, almost like, okay, just need a new way. So what about honoring who I was up until now, because that brought me here? Plus, that's going to be the base to move to sustainably to a new way. Okay, so if you start straight away working for your new way and doing practices, that's fine, but you don't know your current way because it's automatic, it's unconscious. You know what's going to happen is that at a certain point you're going to think that you're in your new way of being, and then suddenly you start having regression, like your old
version.
Your old version, which is still the current way, but the client would say, oh, my old version is coming back. No, your old version is not coming back. It's always been there, but you haven't looked into it yet. So you want to start exploring something, you need to know the territory that you are right now. When you start to know your current way and you start to handle it more and more, now you have a basis to build your new way. So the first practice, all my first practices to any client is to get to know your current way. So for the first 2 weeks, I'm gonna put him in certain contexts where he's gonna pay attention to certain things, doesn't matter now. And then in 2 weeks' time, he's gonna come like, I had these insights. I didn't know I was doing this, and I didn't know I was thinking like this, and it's really interesting. And I was like, okay, we're ready to go now. Now we start building muscles for your new way. So what happens is that your new way of being at the end of the coaching program includes and transcends your current way, if we consider this your current way, and this is your new way. Your new way goes with everything. It's not like get rid of the current way and there you go, your new way. It doesn't happen. It's fake. It's an illusion. And most coaching schools work like that.
I love the idea. And let's see also, if I understand, it's evolution of yourself. You know, you don't you don't put yourself in the trash and pick it up somebody's method. No, it's like Dragon Ball, you know, it's a better version of yourself, you know.
Right. Yeah.
I will describe it easier as itself. And I think it's amazing, the idea. And you were talking also about meditation. That is, I think that we can say that is part of the process. Can you tell me a little bit more? What is the kind of methods, of tools that you use to put the people in the present of stopping to be in that automatic pilot?
Mm-hmm. I normally ask them first question, what's present for you right now? What's present for you in your thoughts? What's present for you emotionally. So what's the emotion or the emotions that are popping up now? And what's your body like? Okay, so straight away, it's like questions that bring you here right now. So this is the main language because I work with what's available now in the infinite sequence of nows that we have in life, a part of the essence of life. So don't get me wrong that maybe you're thinking I'm putting all my clients to meditate. Not in a million years, right? Because I'm putting a few clients to meditate if they need so. Okay. Surely that meditation is a very good practice for many people, but there's a few people that meditation is going to be a heck of a challenge, you know, because the practice of meditation is a low energy, resourceful practice. That's how I would categorize it. But if the client you're working with is extremely anxious with certain stuff, his energy now is not going to be low, it's going to be high, it's not going to be resourceful, it's going to be unresourceful. So if we're continually in a state of anxiety, we're not regenerating ourselves, not like finding the good foods, if you're speaking about energy foods, right? So it's unresourceful. So now so meditation is here in terms of energy, and anxious client is here in terms of energy. You're asking this guy to sit and count his breath. He's not going to make it unless he lies to you, because when he sits, he's going to start moving because the body needs to. So what you need to do is you elevate the energy of the practice you give him so it matches where they are at. And then when he starts to show signs of improvement, if it's still important for the client's challenge, you bring it down and you offer some resourceful practices with low energy. So yeah, so meditation, yoga, tai chi, these are all disciplines that I've offered practices to my clients. I just go where it's good. I can give a practice that's stretching. For example, I sometimes a client that comes with a lot of tension on their shoulders, a lot of anger, and their posture is more like this, So they're all contracted here. Yeah. So a simple practice to work with the body, for a new way of being is like every morning when you wake up, you're gonna do 10 minutes of stretching your anterior muscles. Okay, because you want the new way of being to unfold to something like this, more resourceful. Not like here. That's the current way of being, right? So you need to come here. Okay. So with the practices, they start getting there, And the client, it all makes sense to the client as you're offering. So you're not pushing a practice onto the client when you're sensing or he's telling you that, or she's telling you that it's I don't understand why, and I keep going, you have to do this, you have to do this. No, when the client's telling you something not making sense, then you have to dig right away. What's going on? Because I really want to know. And so you see, because I really want to know is the posture or the approach I take. Because I don't know everything. It's like, tell me, because I really want to know. Right? And so the client can quickly, they trust you. I've had this being told many times. First session, like I spoke about things that I've never spoken in my life with anyone, and 5 minutes into our conversation, I knew I could trust you somehow. I don't know why, And I believe that's being the self as instrument being used in a coaching setting. And we're beings of such deep divine intelligence that we have these channels. But because we are so blocked and contracted in many dimensions of the self, you don't get to feel that consciously, It's just like unconsciously can sense something, Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yes,
I'm
yes,
not sure.
and more, yes, and more than, and comes also with some questions also, because I'm really,
Sure.
you were talking about the different blocks, how we can break that blocks of, sometimes we'll say society, our way of living nowadays, the we are all the time, we don't stop, how we can break that, like a tip for a normal person that you can give it to start it today.
Yeah, it's tough because we, through the years of evolution, our society and us as individuals in this bigger society, we've gone through wars and devastation and many, difficult cycles. Humanity as humanity unfolded, and always with an evolution, right? Um, and through these wars and famine and stresses and sexual abuses, physical abuses, whatever, so much suffering in the world that at an individual level, I have accumulated trauma, okay, that becomes deeply buried in my subconscious. So the psyche takes care of that. That's called the shadow.
Mm.
That was Freud's biggest, in my opinion, um, finding that he passed. That's so important, is that he discovered that the psyche does that. When we have a very difficult experience that we won't be able to process, okay, because maybe it's our father or our mother or our teacher, and I cannot challenge her because I have 5 years old or 10 years old, the psyche does something very interesting, which is to repress the pain you're feeling then, okay, and so you don't get to feel it, so you can move on with your life, okay. And the problem is that this material or aspects of that pain that you have repressed, they will come later in the form of shadow, okay. So that's um, that would be the trauma, individual trauma, will manifest itself in the form of shadow. So shadow means that I'm projecting my own shit. I apologize for the language, but I think here is appropriate.
No problem, you
Yeah.
can say no
Yeah.
problem.
So I'm picking my own shit without knowing, because it's totally unconscious, and I'm projecting it onto you, you know. So let me give you an example. See if you can check your own shadow. Have you ever had a situation where you saw this guy entering a cafe or a bar, or this person entering, doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl, entering a bar, and you felt something, I don't like this guy, I don't like this guy, I don't like this guy, you know. I had many times this experience, and I still have, on a certain level, not with the same intensity, but I still have. And that's because there's an aspect of yourself that unconsciously you're seeing on the other person, and that's triggering you. So it's like what you hate about this guy is what you hate about yourself. So you need to do the turning. That's the shadow, okay? So in terms of what I could say to people is that, one, you have individual traumas, so you need to try and deal with them, okay? And own the shit that you're projecting outside without knowing. So first thing is like, what am I projecting? That's the first question. You need to know what you're projecting, okay? And then you need to do some work to own it. And there's loads of practices to do that. That's at an individual level. At the collective level, we are traumatized. And we carry this from generation into generation. Second World War was not so long ago. That created massive collective trauma. Germany is where you're at.
Yes,
Is a
exactly.
country that carries a lot of trauma, just like Russia, just like Spain, France, England, any country. Let's look at Africa, Brazil, South America, Central America. All countries carry collective trauma that then becomes part of a a collective way of being, and it's imprinted into your culture. It's really hard to break down, you know. So what I could say is really, you know, turn the camera around, look at who you are right now, and do some work to start bringing what's unconscious to put it in front of your eyes. So you go, if you don't do that at some point in your development, that's because something not being right. Okay, you need to bring the shadow into here and go, do I really do that? Gosh, I didn't know I was doing it. You know, that's a typical reaction of owning, and normally it comes with tears, you know, because it's a very sensitive process. So yeah, I mean, and if you want to evolve, best advice I can give you is do it in as integral fashion as possible. And when I say integral, it's like proper Ken Wilber integral, not holistic, because I see many holistic coaches and or holistic approaches. I read many holistic approaches to overtraining, and yet they were only considering that one perspective, outside individual exterior objective perspective. So we're using holistic because we're using a shitload of physiological parameters. That's still coming from one perspective. There's three more. So that's holistic within that perspective. That's not truly integral. You're leaving very important stuff aside that's contributing to that problem you're trying to solve. So my best advice is do it in as integral fashion as possible.
Exactly. And let's see if I understand. Integral, you mean not working just apparent, like one part of it, a mental, but the body also, the spiritual part, maybe. Let's say.
Yeah.
And I love your description of bringing your shadow. I will say one of the ways to do that is having a coach. I think it helps a lot.
Totally.
Can you tell me, and to the listeners and viewers, also exercise that we can do it at home, maybe tonight?
To improve on your shadow?
Exactly. I don't know if it's possible even.
Okay. Yeah, it is possible. It is possible. So let's do it this way. So pick one situation. Normally, when you want to check for your shadow, you check for the people that really annoy you in your life. So do you have one or two or three? I have loads of them, you know, in my life that really proper get into me, and I go like, you know. So when your reaction is that intense, that contraction is that intense, you have to become suspicious straight away that the shadow is in the move, you know. And so think about people that say you hate, for example, you detest. Okay, so I hate that guy, I hate that girl, you know. It really pisses me off when she does this or that, you know. And pick a pen and paper, no mobile or computer, and start to speak third person language. Okay, so you want to say like, I'm going to speak to the friend of this person that I detest. Yeah, and I'm going to tell all the shit I find about her or him. Yeah, so it's like language is like, oh, I hate her because she was doing this to me, you know. She was a bitch because of this. Like, she was third person language. You want to use third person language because you're coming from third perspective approach, because that's where the shadow has been projected. So it goes from first person, like being an aspect of your psyche, of yourself, goes into second person, and eventually third person. Okay, that's when it becomes the most distant to you. So it's like it goes into even like objects or cities, become your shadow. I hate this city. I hate this city. Have you ever heard someone being annoyed because, no, I fucking hate this city, you know? I hate this country, you know? So you bet that in that sentence, there's stuff about yourself that you're projecting upwards. And so actually stuff that you're seeing in this city is actually right there, okay? So, or like put the mobile in countdown for 5 minutes and you speak everything as if you're speaking to a friend of the person. Tell all the shit you want about her. Really go all out, you know, no boundaries. That's supposed to do. You're putting it on the paper, so you just put your whole truth there. 5 minutes, it rings. Take a deep breath, and now move it to second person. So now you're going to speak to the one involved, to the person that really triggers you. And now you can tell her everything. But now you're not speaking in she did this to me, you know. You're going to say you did this to me, and I hate it when you do this to me, right? You're speaking in second person. So you went from third to second person. Okay, so you do that for 5 minutes again. Boom, 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 split it off. And when you change, so there's going to be a time that you're going to finish saying all that you want to say. Now you shift to their own skin and you let them reply to you. And be curious to what comes out in your hands on paper, because sometimes you already get curious there, right? It's very interesting because now you're getting in their own shoes. Maybe some compassion is going to start emerging as you start to come from his or her perspective, you know. Yeah, but, you know, it was hard, you know, and my parents were doing this to me, maybe that was why. And the final move, when the time, so then you can shift a bit in terms of you speaking for the person that triggers you speaking to you, okay, which is always going to be you, yeah. But you shift a couple of times. So let's go back and forth in those perspectives. And then you take a deep breath at the end, the 5 minutes. And when you're ready, you go and you now speak everything as first person. Okay. So now you move everything into I language, into self language. So if I hate you because you were doing this and this and that to me, it's like, I hate myself because I was doing this and that to me. So you change everything to first person. And that comes with if you do it properly, it comes with a powerful somatic experience. At times, depending on how much trauma may be involved, what you experience in your body can be quite releasing, or you feel somehow alleviated, because now you no longer have to spend energy throwing at others anymore, because now you've started to see that actually this was all me the whole time. It's not about her or him, it's about me. And that moment is a special moment always, you know. And so that's something you can do. So think about someone that really annoys you, really makes you angry. I bet you there's shadow there. There's stuff that you're projecting on your daily life without knowing whatsoever. You have no clue you're doing it. And speak as third person, second person, and first person. So this is the 3-2-1 process. It's called.
Sorry, can you repeat?
It's called the 3-2-1 process.
3-2-1 person.
From third to first person perspective.
I love the idea, and it's a way first to have empathy for the other person, and after for yourself, and after also to empower yourself, you know, because you know it's much easier if I point the finger to you and I don't. Man, I love the idea. I love the idea.
So good to point the fingers, isn't it? So
much
easy
easier.
To point out the fingers.
Much easier.
And it's sad that it's that way, but that's the way it is. Humans are built as massively complex beings.
And I also took some of not just this, but from part of the conversation, part of your coaching, and tell me if I'm wrong, please. It's really based on intuition from you and from your client and self-awareness. Like I
Yeah, but not just that. Then the
no,
whole theory behind. So that's what I
exactly.
was saying. So it's like first I needed to learn the theory, understand it here,
Uh-huh.
and then through practicing with coaching, then I start to be not so much here in my head,
Hmm.
and this method can start to become embodied in myself, so that when I'm coaching, it's naturally coming from me. Just like when you learn to ride the bike, when kids
Hmm.
learn it in the first few stages, they're working a lot their heads, and if you really notice, they're making an effort to understand, okay, the balance, and eventually that becomes embodied, so they don't no longer needing this cognition to be so activated,
Hmm.
could say, and so they can now move to the body, and it becomes embodied, the learning of going into a bicycle. Okay, same thing in jiu-jitsu. First time you learn an arm lock, how do you do the arm lock from the guard, how do you do the arm lock from mounting, how do you move to the black, where when you're learning it, you're using more your mental faculties. Nothing wrong with that. The problem is when you just stick to that
Hmm.
and you don't move neck down, you know, because then, and so what do you do in jiu-jitsu to embody the arm lock or the different techniques of jiu-jitsu? You practice. You do one thing that's called practice. That's why practice is such a strong part of this coaching method. Because with no practice, forget about it. You're not doing any embodiment. You're just doing head learning. And you can go like, ha ha, ha, oh yeah, okay, I get this. Yeah. You can have amazing, insightful, and deep conversations with people. And you go like, wow, yeah, I was doing that. Yeah, I never noticed. Yeah, okay, so now I can change. And then, because you haven't built any muscles, you don't have no awareness of your current way, then it just doesn't move forward. So in terms of answering your questions, I tend to deviate a lot. It's not easy
No
answers.
problem.
It's complex, So
Exactly.
it's like you use cognition, for the integral method, but
Hmm.
then you use the self.
Hmm.
So heart and intuition, okay,
Gut.
would be the belly,
The gut.
the gut feeling, right? Exactly.
Good.
So, and then what you learn, or what I learned during these 2 years, is like trying to align mind with heart and intuition.
Wow.
If we get them aligned, these three very important points of your body, then coaching or this integral method just tends to flow from you, okay, with no real effort. And you go real deep with the client. It's wonderful. You're not, in the beginning when I started coaching, I was making a lot of effort. So it's taking away a lot of energy from me. At the end of each session, I'll be, oof, I'm tired, and these days this has clearly changed through the years of practice and more embodiment of the method. So yeah, it's like um, mind, heart, intuition, uh, body, mind, soul, spirit, um, and essentially, yeah. So soul and spirit would be the transcendent dimensions of the self in us, and so I need to always be working uh, my body some way, my mind in some way, my soul in some way, and my spirit in some ever-present awareness, and you've got practices for each, loads of them. Okay, so it's really an integral method where you're trying not to leave some very important dimensions of who we are aside, just because you don't know it. So you need a very good map, and Ken Wilber provides an incredible and rigorous map of human beings, you know, and so that's why it's very complete. It's a very solid, coherent method, and yeah. So you use. I'm not going to say you use everything, because using everything is also can feel a bit chaotic, and it does feel to me. But you use the important pieces that each school of thought and each dimensions of our beings have. Okay, and so if you do it this way, it's a more comprehensive, inclusive, and effective way of working with change, because that's what coaching works with change. Change is fucking complex. So you better have a very fucking complex method or theory behind it so that it matches our complexity.
No, but I like the idea because it's like, and I didn't knew about him before I studied a little bit about your career, but I love the idea about the connection of all, because I think, at my opinion, you are right. You cannot work just the body or the mind or the soul or the spirit. You have to work as one.
There you go.
I think it's
you have to include these different dimensions in your practice, at least in your awareness, you know. In your, yeah.
That I like also the idea to know, like you were saying, about your current image of yourself and what you want to achieve. You know, like seeing the journey.
The current way, the new way. Yeah.
The journey. I think it's a nice idea.
As opposed to just working with a new way. So forget who you were up until now. That's clearly not working. We need to fix you, get a new way. And that's not very helpful. But unfortunately, that's how majority of coaching schools or sports psychologists or psychologists are working, not caring at all for the current way, for what's present now, for who you are now. Psychiatrists, no one, not working, unless it's integral psychology or integral psychiatry or integral coaching. Then you work with that.
The connection. I think it's a really, really, really nice idea. And like, for the people interested, I will put after like I said, at the website of Nuno, that you can have a look to understand better the idea. Now, I want to ask you, do you know that you find your life meaning as a mental coach?
If I find my life meaning
through mental coaching, your purpose in life, I like to ask to my yours.
Oh, so if I found did I find my life purpose through Integral Coaching Canada? You mean? Maybe that would be the correct question. Okay. No. No and yes. Like, my life purpose, I found it before I came across Ken Wilber's model or Integral Coaching Canada. My life purpose, I found, a few months before I initiated my PhD in overtraining and burnout. Because by that time I was making the conclusions that I need, without using these words, I was basically saying we need to look into the interior dimensions of human beings. That's what I did. The interior dimensions of the self and the collective. That's what was lacking. We were just looking at the objective dimensions, the exterior, observable, measurable, quantifiable. When you delve into interior dimensions, you don't see them in space and time. You don't see the emotion of love in space and time. You don't see the emotion of anger in space and time, but you feel it. And just because you don't see it doesn't mean that it's not there, that it's not true. So, shit, lost my train of thought. Where was I going? What was the? Oh, my life purpose. Yeah. So, um, when I was a few months before that, I was having these insights. A few months before I started my PhD, I realized that I want to unpack overtraining and burnout in athletes so that then I can help them. And that was my first stage of my vision and my mission, or that I felt like, yeah, I can do a difference because I've been there, I'm studying it, and next I can do a difference. And because I suffered a lot, I knew that so many athletes are suffering, so many, suffered in the past and suffering right now. And so I could be useful if I work with athletes, not just to improve their performance, make them better human beings as well, but also deal with situations of overtraining and burnout and help them recover from that. So that was my first stage of vision, is like, okay, I want to help these athletes overcome overtraining and burnout, and I want to help them empower their performance, their sports performance, by delving on the interior dimension or the inner dimension of each athlete, which is not being done by the sports coaches. And it's not expected to be done because they haven't taken that training. Okay. So we just need to complement, click. And so this was the years of my PhD, and then graduated from the PhD, and then 4 years go by, and I'm starting to work with a few clients, my first athletes, my first coaching programs. And in 2014, so I did my final training with Integral Coaching Canada. It was a 10-month journey where I started to realize, because this final training was really powerful and deep, it took me to face my own suffering and my own pain properly, seriously, And so when I was graduating then in June 2014, now I was slightly shifting the why I'm doing this. Because I realized when you look at yourself deeply, you realize how much the world is suffering. Because now you can be humble enough to recognize the suffering of others. And so ultimately, even if I'm working with an athlete, what I'm ultimately working, and this is my mission, I'm coming to my point, is I'm helping to alleviate the suffering of this human being. So that's what I do, It's something that I'm proud of. I'm not singing it on the streets. It's rarely that I speak about this. Unfortunately, I would like to speak more because I'm very passionate for this, as you may see. But what I'm ultimately doing, and I really want to do, is help alleviate human suffering. In this case, it doesn't matter if it's an athlete or non-athlete. It's a human being. That's the best, I believe, one of the most honorable things we can do is to help other humans, evolve and alleviate their suffering whilst alleviating our own suffering. Because I have to keep checking with ICC, Integral Coaching Canada, to renew. Every year we're doing inner work. We keep looking at our own shit, because it keeps popping, boom, boom. There's always new things popping up, and I'm like, oh, you're here as well, new shadow. I wasn't aware of. All the time. All the time, I'm exaggerating, but it's a process. It's like, yeah, you're not like. I had the idea that when I graduated from ICC, that I wouldn't have to continue my interior work, and then it became very obvious because it was part of their rules. If you don't do this, you're out. We take your license away. So all ICC coaches are doing their own work, and that's been wonderful. What a gift, keep doing it.
I think it's a great purpose of helping other one, like, because everyone, exactly like you said it, in a world that we are today, everyone has something that, or you are fear about, or you are in pain, like you said it, like top athletes or a normal guy, a normal Joe, like we said it.
Yeah. Everyone has got suffering accumulated.
And
Every single one. That's the essence of life. Because also suffering, paradoxically, is what makes you evolve. That's the funny thing about life and life's essence, is like suffering, like the first noble truth of Siddhartha Gautama, Buddha. He said, first truth is life is suffering. You suffer, okay, because you're contained in this ego identity that creates attachment to things, and it's in the attachment that suffering is created, because you hold on to something that you want to keep, precious, or you don't want to have it, right? So this is what the addiction, or the allergy, like I call it, is where suffering lies, and but this is also, when we look at these addictions or allergies, that this is when I flourish, because it's like layers of yourself that are being slowly taken away. That's a painful process, but liberating. So you see, it's all these paradoxes. Life is paradox.
No, but and I love the idea about the suffering, and at the same time the detachment, like you said it, and that makes you, I will say, near to your true self, to your true path.
Your true self, yes, yourself with a capital S.
I think
that's how I like to call it.
A really nice idea. I wanted also, because I saw in your videos you talking about fear. How can we face fear? Or what is the best way to approach fear? If I can say that, I think it's a better question.
Yeah, it's a very good question, and certainly very important. But I would just add to your question, like, because it's not just how can we approach fear or deal with fear? How do you deal?
I think both. If you want to answer to both of them, how it's the best way to approach fear,
and then how can we deal with it? Yeah, I would just challenge that question and put it like, how can we approach or deal with fear, anger, shame, all these other emotions that bring us a lot of suffering, because the process is pretty similar to any. Fear is an emotion, anger is an emotion, shame is an emotion. So the approach would be similar, and that's what I try to pass on my videos, is that so when you're dealing with any of these powerful emotions, I don't call them negative emotions. They're not negative. They're there. They have a huge role. Goodness Lord, if we had no fear, we wouldn't have evolved to where we're at. So if we had no anger, we wouldn't have evolved. Same with shame, same with other emotions. Okay, but these three for me are very crucial. And the way, the approach is like, you approach your emotions by feeling them. Majority of people does not feel their emotions. They think their emotions. They analyze and interpret what they may mean, you know. So they approach emotions from here. That's a complete disconnection, because the emotions don't happen here. Here you have brain activity that we can measure, yes, and it's important, yes, it's fine. It's interesting data. But that's a reflection of what's happening neck down. So where they happen is in your body. You know, it's a very primitive thing. Okay, it doesn't happen here. This is an extra structure of evolution. Okay, for us human beings, that we have a prefrontal cortex. So you have an incredible ability to deep thinking, you know, and taking perspectives. And so the way to approach emotions is you need to start disconnecting what's in your current way of being and how you relate to emotions. Majority of people's current way of dealing with emotions is here. So I normally ask my questions, what are you feeling now? What's the emotion that's present? They'll do one thing. This is universal. So they're thinking the emotion. They're trying to think the emotion. It's not going to get there. It's not going to feel anything if you think the emotion. You're just trying to analyze what's going on. And then you go on a rant and you create a story about this emotion. When I just ask you a very simple question, just one word, the answer. What are you feeling? What's the emotion? You know? And it's funny. It just goes on a story about the emotion, but they don't make the click because they haven't felt it. They're still here. So I have to, you know, slowly but surely conduce them to their bodies. Stop, you know, because then it's just, and whilst they, as long as they're speaking, they're here, you know, mainly. So you need to shut that down and just stop and see if you can sense any tension in your body. Okay, be it fear, anger, shame, panic, whatever. You need to feel in the body what's happening, and then, so that's the first step. You feel the emotion. The second step is you be with the emotion. Stay with it. Stay there. You know? And when you start to stay there, it's like you start for the first time to really pick up the phone and now listen to what the emotion is passing, you know. And this is not black and white. You know, when you're delving deeper on this inner dimension, inner realm, things are not, they lose their logic. Yeah. So logic is very important for certain contexts. I never will take that away. I use logics all the time in my daily life. But when you're working with interiors, logic's gone. You know, you start to work with what's personal, but what's transpersonal as well. You know, and here in these realms, there's no logic. Okay, so you need to trust what you're feeling. So it's like how to approach fear and other emotions. Stop, feel it, and be with it. And when you do this enough times, you will notice that what happens is that you transcend the emotion. So suddenly fear is no longer there. Suddenly anger is no longer there. And and whatever is there, is whatever is left that you find as a result, that's what what the emotion was trying to tell you. Right? There you pick up the phone properly. Okay. but yeah, unfortunately, again, I still see a lot of this mental approach to emotions, you know.
I
And
think
then
it's
one thing be said, sorry, let me just say this. One
please,
thing be
please.
said, I didn't mention it about my, um, I call myself a mental coach, right? I'm I'm a mental coach because that was the only way that athletes were gonna maybe look at me, you know.
Mm.
Because in the beginning, when I graduated, I was selling myself as an integral coach, you know, and I was trying to shout out very loudly on how this method is more evolved than others, and da da da. And if 2 or 3 years, I realized just no one is buying that shit unless it's in a conversation like this. That's fine, but no one is buying your integral. You're in what master integral coach? What's that? What is that? So I, for purpose of business and selling myself, I just said, yeah, I'm a mental coach, you know. And if you ask me, I don't really like mental coach because that's like going against what I this whole thing that I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm an integral
Exactly.
coach. I'm not a mental coach because mental coach is here, you know.
Exactly. It's not one dimension, it's at least four of them. So I
Yeah,
understand you. I completely understand you. And it's like you said that I just wanted to because the time that you were thinking that the emotions, at least me, I will talk for myself. It's always in analytic way, you know. We try to analyze our emotions, not like
and yeah.
what is making to my body the tensions. Why I don't know like if there is some connections with back hurts, why my back it's hurting. I don't.
Most likely, yes. Not surprising because emotions, and especially blocked emotions, they'll lock in some part of your body.
Hmm,
And you will stay there until you go there and unblock it with some help of professional. You can do that,
exactly.
you know. But there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stuff that you can do by yourself. So
No, but I love the idea. No, I really like it, the idea. It's like, and it's your approach. It's like I understand you. It's easier to sell the mental coach, but the aspect that you do, it's much more global. I
yeah,
will say. I will say now.
it
I want
includes mental coaching, but much more than that.
exactly part of it. It is the mental coaching, like you were saying,
Part
but
of it is, yes, yeah, exactly.
hmm
So
hmm
I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as they normally say. Okay, so when I give the bath to my 5-month-old, when time to she's finished, I keep my baby and I get rid of the water. That's it. Okay, so I don't get rid of everything. Yeah, so same here.
I love it. Now, I also like to answer to my guests. How do you describe your mindset and how being like I will say it, a professional athlete helped you to have I will say strong because I will describe a professional athlete as a person with a strong mindset. How do you think that
Yeah.
the description and how the being a professional athlete helped you?
Well, yeah, definitely, because I mean it strengthens you as you go with all the challenges you inevitably are going to experience. They're they were slowly shaping my mindset um, at a deep level, you know, uh, giving you a giving me a view of life that you know you have to take sacrifices, you have to to work for what you want to become, and that takes dealing with a lot of challenges and disappointments and etc. And and that's again those experiences were what was forming my mindset, and so it's interesting. Apologies.
No problem.
It's interesting that um, my mindset has evolved, and it's interesting that being such an insecure kid, and despite being a very good swimmer, but I lacked so many skills. Socially, I wasn't good. I was extremely insecure, and still the mindset, like at a deeper level, that mindset of keep going for your challenges, for your goals, keep fighting for them, sticking to them, believing in them. This was something that was left from these early years in swimming, and it's so what basically happens is that I've just built capacities around other areas of my life, and not to do with sport, but also to do with sports, where I just became a more confident and secure person. And so it's like a mixture of the depth of my experiences as a swimmer through the years. It's like the foundation, really, because it's those aspects of you just keep fucking going and believing in yourself. You have faith, you keep fucking going, and then you add to that these new capabilities that I've been practicing through the years. And then what you get, or what I consider to be my mindset, is a very solid but flexible mindset. When you have too much of a rock solid mindset, that can also break when things don't go so well, and you don't want it to snap. You just want to bend the branch, when they're early, they're young, and they're quite green. You can bend and you're not going to break it. So when they're dry, it snaps. So that's what you don't want to happen to your mindset, is it snaps completely. So and this has to do with the attachments. So how attached are you to your goal and outcome? It's like, I want my athletes to be, fucking into their goal, and I'll support them with that. You fucking attach to that goal you want, but at the same time, and this is a paradox, you have to be able to be loose with that goal you want to attach, because then it snaps, and when it snaps, you can have a breakdown, and it's gonna take you a long time to overcome it, and also it's gonna take you longer to learn from what just happened, So I believe that there's a time when we're disappointed. There should be always a period of time post, or immediately after, where we're going to have to process and be with that pain, that disappointment, whatever it was. So our bodies need that, okay? Because we can't process it fast in the moment. It takes time to process, So just being there, or being with your pain for a while, within reason, without drowning on your pain. So I don't want that as well. So be there until you start to feel that you're now able to process it, and then you can move on and learn from what happened, as opposed to snap and then it becomes harder, because it's like you're dealing with almost like a full recovery, mentally, emotionally.
And it's much tougher. And I like the moment that you said it, I saw like the image of Bruce Lee, be like water, just be like water.
In the sky.
Yeah, and it's, I really, 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 really like your idea, and like working towards your goals. I think that is quite important, because I think it's sometimes myself, I get mistaken with that. Work towards your goal, but if you don't achieve it, it's not the end of the world, like don't let yourself break it just because you don't achieve it. Like, keep going. I think it's a great idea. Like, don't get
Yeah,
yourself
it's
stuck.
a balance of being connected with the process that you're under,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just being connected with the outcome, the result, the final result. That's in the future, distant, it's not here right now. So again, it's paradoxical because it's not to say that you don't focus on the goal, the distant
Mm-hmm.
goal. Yeah, focus on that, but pay more attention to the process you're under, because this is where the process, when you connect to the process, you're immediately in the present, in the moment. You're right now. You're right now. You're right now. And that's where the juice is. Yeah, that's where the truth is. Right?
I love the idea. I love the idea. Can you talk a little bit, like, I love the idea because yes, sometimes we focus so much on the future, but we forget to live the present. And like you said, it's where the juice are. Like, it's it's so right. And like, again, I think it's quite important. Like, how can you sometimes focus more and more in the present and don't let ourselves going so much to the future.
Or to the past. Some
Well
people just
said it. Well said it.
stay locked in the past.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's true. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not going to say, well, meditate and you're going to stick more to the present. I would say that's partially true. That could help. Maybe if it's an anxious person, that's not going to help. But I would say it's the way you live your life, the, the most integral way possible that you live your life. So you're paying attention to certain stuff that we mentioned here. You're paying attention to the exteriors, to the interiors, to your individual, and to your collective. And then you're paying attention to body, mind, soul, spirit. That's the start. And so all the practices that you can do around here will help you stay more here. That's how I could answer.
I think it's a really nice idea. Also, I like to. I know that you talk a little bit about pressure. How can we deal with not always as an athlete, but as a person, our daily pressure? How is the best way to deal with our daily pressure that we all have?
I think the answer is similar to the emotion reply I gave. Stop, feel it, be with it. Um, pressure we feel is coming from a place of fear. When we feel pressured, because we feel pressured because of an outcome that we don't want to happen. We want a specific outcome and not the other. So the pressure we're feeling is like we're just feeling fear. We're just scared that that outcome is not going to happen. And at the deeper level, that's at the superficial level. At the deeper level, you're scared of some other real stuff. You're scared of, you know, not having the acknowledgement you were seeking from your parents or from your teacher or, your wife. And at that deeper level, you're scared of being alone, being left alone in the world. That's a sentiment or a fear that I see my daughter dealing with when she wakes up and her mom is not there. So you have this fear of being separate and left alone. It's it's part of our growth.
think it's a great. Let me ask you now about daily habits. Do you have any daily habits?
Well, I'll be honest to say that my life since my daughter was born has been shaken a bit. So my daily habits is waking up around 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. depending on how she slept, and staying with her. And when I'm with her, there's not much that I can do, or as much as I try. Maybe I'm gonna work here a bit, and so I just gave up now. They need constant attention, so my practice is to be with her now. But I can tell you, before she was born, I meditate since 2007. No, I meditate since 2006. I started my meditation practice, and I've kept it throughout. And so, what was a normal morning for me was waking up, doing sitting 30 minutes, observe my breath, or focusing on a part of my body and just connecting there. And then I'll do some type of physical practice to raise my energy levels. Be some series of press ups, some yoga poses, or normally something with a high intensity, because I love high intensity as well. And that wakes my body up. It's like waking up my mind and my heart first, and then waking up the body. That's a normal routine that I'm wishing I can go back. I think soon, when she starts to stay with her grandmother, and maybe I'm going to be able to go back to these practices. And, I mean, this is still an excuse, because then I can deliver her back to the mom, and I could organize myself, but it's not easy.
No.
Not easy.
And it's also you live this one time, so I think it's part of enjoying to be a father. It's just enjoying this time. So I think you have time to routines after enjoying this time. Like, I wanted to ask you, which of the daily habits you will suggest me to start today, or to me, or to the listeners or viewers? Or it will depend also from the person? Now that with the conversation going.
Yes, totally. It's tough. I was going to say it's a tough question, because what the person really needs, you can book a call with me, and I'll let you know.
Okay.
what maybe is going to be good for you or important for you, or the listeners can book a call with me. It's for free, has no compromise. The first call. So, yeah, I can say so many things. I think it's fair to leave it like that, because I can tell you, go running for 30 minutes, and maybe running is going to be a great practice for you, or maybe it's not going to be so good for you. There's so many good practices out there, that there's so many that I can say, but in terms of what you need, then I would have to listen to you first, to then decide, or any one of our listeners.
Yeah, no, but it's a great advice, and
I don't know if this is a spoiler.
No, it's completely, and it's like you said it, like, it's from person to person. Maybe you can try to run as an example. If I feel that it's not for me, I can try to meditate. If I feel that it's not for me, like you were saying, I can try to do yoga. Also, a little bit of the connection that you were saying, you have to try to have the connection with yourself. Let me ask you, we are almost ending. Legacy. What is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
I want to change the way that high competitive sports are being experienced by athletes and being run by the system the society we're under, to transform it to a healthy place of where athletes can empower themselves as athletes and empower their performances, so we get better performances, but also they are learning about themselves through doing it, and so they are growing their interior dimensions as human beings. They're unfolding to higher potentials. um, so that's the legacy I want to leave.
It's perfect. Now, I don't know if you like to read, if you are a big reader or not.
Yeah, I love reading. Don't do it as much as I would like.
Can you advise me
Totally,
a
totally.
nice book?
Yes, I'll advise you. I thought about this. Uh, um, hmm, A Theory of Everything by Ken Wilber. And I would suggest also Integral Psychology by Ken Wilber. Since I spoke so much about, you know, the theory and the method, I think it's plausible or
Mm-hmm.
adequate to suggest some Ken Wilber reading.
Of course it is. What also to know if you have any new projects to share with me and the listeners.
Well, currently I'm, you know, I've created, just launched my workshop for athletes.
Okay.
I created one for sports coaches, and created this now more recently. A year ago, I created for sports coaches, and now with the COVID crisis, I created one for athletes. It was already a project, um, and um, and I'm wanting to shift, adapt this workshop for athletes and the one for coaches, for sports coaches, to a course, online course, so that I can then launch, and so that more people can have access to it.
It's a great
That's
idea.
currently that's what I'm working on.
I think it's a great idea. It's a great idea. Give it the information. And now I like to ask it also, where the people, if they want to have a call with you, where the people can find you in your social media.
Well, social media potentially is the easiest. So mental coaching for, as in the number for sports, mental coaching for sports, is where they can find me on Instagram. Then they can email me at mentalcoaching at nemmentalcoaching.com. So there's two M's there followed. So mental coaching at NM, which is Nuno Matos, mentalcoaching.com. So they can email me there. And yeah, I think that would be the easiest. Right? So if you go to my website, it's www.nemmentalcoaching.com. Then you have access to everything. So there's the email there, there's the social media. I'm not suggesting Facebook because I'm not using Facebook so much anymore. It's still there. And you even have my mobile there, mobile number, so you can contact me easily.
I will put after in the description of the video the website and also the Instagram if the people prefer to just DM you. I think it's more casual way to do it. To end it, do you have any last advice to me and for the listeners and viewers?
I'll just say, let me check. Advice. Yeah, I think whatever may be happening in your life is for a reason. be very tough or very good, and that you make the most to learn from what's happening now, that you make your best to really listen, not just not like this listening, but like listening from the heart to what life is wanting from you and how life is moving through you, and allow it to, in its own way or in its own ways, to propel you forward or backwards, if that's what's happening now. To accept that it's all part of living, and it's all part of this mystery we're under, that increases as you delve deeper into who you truly are.
I think it's a great last advice. Nuno, thank you so much for having the time. Guys, don't forget to go to Nuno's Instagram, to his website, give them some thumbs up, and don't forget to visit us. Thank you so much, Nuno, one more time.
Valeu, thank you.